In my last few videos, I explained how to find molecular orbitals, determine molecular symmetry, assign point groups, use character tables, and connect these ideas to molecular properties such as bonding, polarity, and vibrations. In this video, I'm going to bring these ideas together by working through two practice examples and applying the same steps to real molecules. Let's start with Cl2. First, we will construct the molecular orbital diagram. I have made a more detailed video on this already, but here's the general process. 1. Draw the Lewis structure. 2. Identify the valence atomic orbitals from the electron configurations. 3. Compare orbital energies. 4. Check for sp mixing. 5. Build the molecular orbital diagram and fill the electrons. So going back to step 1, Lewis structure. Cl2 has a single covalent bond between two chlorine atoms. So from the Lewis structure, we expect a linear diatomic molecule with one bond. Step 2, electron configuration. Each chlorine atom has an electron configuration of 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, 3p5. For molecular orbital bonding, we focus mainly on the valence orbitals, which are the 3s and 3p orbitals. The inner 1s, 2s, 2p electrons are core electrons. They are much lower in energy and are already filled, so they usually do not control the bonding or chemical behavior we are trying to predict. And this does not mean the core orbitals do not exist, it just means that their bonding and anti-bonding combinations are both filled and largely cancel out in terms of bond order. 3. Orbital energies. Because Cl2 is made from two identical chlorine atoms, the atomic orbitals on each atom have the same energy. So the 3s orbitals on both chlorine atoms are drawn at the same energy level, and the 3p orbitals are also drawn at the same level. Step 4. Sp mixing. For chlorine, significant sp mixing is not expected. This is because the 3s and 3p orbitals are separated through enough energy that they do not strongly interact. A useful way to think about this is that sp mixing is strongest when orbitals of the same symmetry are close in energy and electronegativity is relatively low, like below 2.5. Therefore, I would not treat electronegativity as a strict rule here. It is only a rough guide because the real issue is orbital energy separation. Step 5. Build the molecular orbital diagram. The 3s orbitals form sigma 3s bonds, sigma 3s antibonds. The 3p orbitals form sigma bonds, pi antibonds, and sigma antibonds. Now we fill the 14 valence electrons because each chlorine contributes 7 valence electrons. So the bond order is the bonding electrons minus the antibonding electrons divided by 2. For chlorine, the bond order is 6 minus 4 divided by 2, which is 1. So the molecular orbital diagram predicts a single bond, which agrees with the Lewis structure. Because all the electrons are paired, Cl2 is also diatomic. That means there is no unpaired electrons and is weakly repelled by a magnetic field rather than attracted like a paramagnetic molecule. And lastly, we can see the highest occupied molecular orbital, or HOMO, and LUMO, which is the lowest unoccupied molecular orbital, to give an idea of what molecular orbitals might this molecule bond with. Now, let's look at the symmetry. Cl2 is a linear homonuclear diatomic molecule. The key symmetry elements are E, the identity operation, C infinity, rotations by an angle around the Cl bond axis, an infinite number of vertical mirror planes containing the bond axis, a center of inversion at the midpoint of the bond, a horizontal mirror plane perpendicular to the bond axis at the center, or an S-symmetry operation where the rotation can be by a C infinity rotation, and an infinity C2 axis perpendicular to the main molecular axis. And then to easily confirm the point group, we can use the point group flowchart. Is the molecule linear? Yes. Does it have a center of inversion? Yes. Therefore, the point group of Cl2 is D infinity H. This is important because D infinity H tells us Cl2 is highly symmetric. Since the two atoms are identical, there is no permanent dipole, so Cl2 is nonpolar. But more importantly, we can use the symmetry operations to read the character table and assign the irreducible representations of each molecular orbital in the valence shell. I have shown the character table here, and I have also made a separate video explaining how to use these character tables in more detail. Starting with the first molecular orbital, this orbital is unchanged by every symmetry operation. Its character is therefore 1 for every operation, so it belongs to the totally symmetric representation. For the second molecular orbital, the first 3 operations leave the orbital unchanged, so these characters are 1. However, the inversion, S infinity, and the perpendicular C2 operations change the sign of the orbital, so these are assigned a character of -1. The third molecular orbital is again unchanged by every symmetry operation, so all the characters are 1. The fourth set is a pair of degenerate pi orbitals. Because these are 2 orbitals, we treat them together. Under the C infinity rotation, the X-type pi orbital starts to rotate into the Y-type pi orbital, and the Y-type orbital rotates into the X-type orbital. This means as they rotate, they become or start to look like each other. And the amount of each orbital that remains in its original direction is given by cos phi. Since there are 2 orbitals, the total character is cos phi plus cos phi, or 2 cos phi. For the sigma v mirror planes, one pi orbital is symmetric while the other is antisymmetric, so the contributions are 1 minus 1, which equals 0. For inversion, both change sign, so we have -1 and -1, which is -2. For the S infinity operation, the orbitals are rotated and then reflected through the horizontal mirror plane. For the perpendicular pi u set, the reflection does not introduce an extra negative sign, so the character remains 2 cos phi. For the perpendicular C2 operations, one orbital is left symmetric and the other is antisymmetric, so the total character is again 1 minus 1, which is 0. The next pair of pi orbitals behaves in a very similar way, but with 2 important differences. Under inversion, both orbitals are now symmetric, so the character is +2. However, under the S infinity, the horizontal reflection changes the sign of the pi g set, so the character becomes -2 cos phi. Finally, for the last molecular orbital, the first 3 symmetry operations leave the orbital unchanged, giving 1, while the last 3 operations change the sign of the orbital, giving -1. So by comparing each row of character with the character table, we can assign a symmetry label to each molecular orbital, and we can go back and finish our molecular orbital diagram by adding the correct symmetry labels to each molecular orbital. It is also useful because molecular orbitals of the same symmetry can interact with each other, especially if they are close in energy, and it helps us make predictions about molecular properties, including bonding, orbital mixing, and molecular vibrations. Now, speaking of molecular vibrations, for a linear molecule, the number of vibrations is 3n minus 5, where n is the number of atoms and 5 is built from the translational and rotational degrees of freedom, where one rotational direction is redundant for linear molecules, so we only account for 2. For Cl2, n is 2, so we have 3 times 2 minus 5, which is 1. So Cl2 has one vibrational mode, the Cl-Cl stretching vibration. During this stretch, the molecule remains nonpolar because both atoms are identical. The vibration does not create a changing dipole moment, so the fundamental stretch is IR inactive. However, the vibrations do change the polarizability of the molecule, so it's Raman active. Using symmetry language or going back to the character table, this stretching vibration transforms as sigma g plus, and we can see it has a quadratic function in more than one dimension, meaning it's Raman active. So we have confirmed this with the character table. from the molecular orbital and symmetry analysis, we can conclude Cl2 has a bond order of 1. It's diamagnetic, it's nonpolar, it belongs to the D infinity H point group, it has one vibrational mode, and its fundamental stretch is Raman active but IR inactive. This shows why symmetry and molecular orbital theory are useful. They do not just describe the molecule, they help us predict bonding, magnetism, polarity, and spectroscopy. So an example of how this could be useful is if we wanted to detect Cl2, we could first separate it into a nonpolar solvent, then react it with something compatible with its molecular orbitals like ethene, which is a good example. And this suggests that if after separation we get a product of dichloroethane, we may have Cl2, which we can further infer if we use Raman spectroscopy showing one peak and IR showing none. So in practice, chlorine is usually detected using chemical or electrochemical methods, but this is a pretty good example to show strong evidence of Cl2. So this example shows us how Lewis structure, molecular orbitals, point groups, character tables, and spectroscopy all connect. Now let's do one more example, BF3. This is a useful example because it is still a simple molecule, but it is no longer linear. It is trigonal planar. Step 1, Lewis structure. BF3 has boron in the center bonded to 3 fluorine atoms. Boron has 3 valence electrons. Each fluorine has 7. The Lewis structure has 3 BF single bonds with 3 lone pairs on each fluorine. Step 2, electron configuration. Boron has an electron configuration of 1s2, 2s2, 2p1. Fluorine has an electron configuration of 1s2, 2s2, 2p5. For bonding, we focus on the valence orbitals. For boron, we have 2s and 2p orbitals. For fluorine, we have 2s and 2p orbitals. The core 1s orbitals are much lower in energy and are usually ignored in the valence molecular orbital picture. Step 3, orbital energies. Fluorine is much more electronegative than boron, so fluorine valence orbitals are lower in energy than boron valence orbitals. This means that the BF bonding orbitals will have more fluorine character, while the anti-bonding orbitals will have more boron character, or B orbitals will be higher in energy than F orbitals in the molecular orbital diagram. This is different from Cl2, where both atoms were identical and the orbital energies were the same. Step 4. Do we have sp mixing? Because the fluorine atoms are so electronegative, this separates sp mixing, as you can imagine fluorine pulling boron's p orbitals away from its s, so there's not really sp mixing. Step 5. Build the molecular orbital diagram. For a polyatomic molecule like BF3, we do not combine one orbital with one orbital in isolation. Instead, we use symmetry to combine the 3 fluorine orbitals into symmetry-adapt linear combinations, or SALCs. So this is where the character table would be really useful. So let's stop here and start going through the symmetry first. BF3 is trigonal planar. It has E, the identity operation, a C3 axis perpendicular to the molecular plane, 3 C2 axes in the molecular plane, a horizontal mirror plane or sigma h, which is the plane of the molecule, 3 vertical mirror planes or sigma v, and an improper rotation or S3. Now, using the flow chart, is the molecule linear? No. Does it have more than 2 Cn axis where n is greater than 2? No. Does it have a Cn rotational axis? Yes. Is this perpendicular to C2? Yes. Does it have a sigma h mirror plane? Yes. So we have DNH, or in this case D3H. So here this symmetry explains an important property of BF3. Even though each BF bond is polar, the molecule as a whole is non-polar. The 3 bond dipoles are arranged symmetrically in a trigonal planar shape, so they cancel out the polarity. Now let's connect this to the character table. In D3H, the main symmetry labels we need are A1 prime, A2 double prime, and E prime. Now, going back to our molecular orbital diagram, the 3 fluorine orbitals pointing towards the boron form salx with the symmetries A1 prime and E prime. Now we compare these with the boron valence orbitals. In the D3 point group, boron S2 has A1 prime symmetry, boron 2px and 2py have E prime symmetry, and boron 2pz has A2 prime symmetry if the Z is perpendicular to the molecular plane. And the molecular orbitals can only mix strongly if they have compatible symmetries. So the A1 prime fluorine salx can mix with boron's 2s orbital. The E prime fluorine salx can mix with boron's 2px and 2py orbitals. And the boron 2pz orbital does not participate in same phase sigma bonding framework. This gives 3 BF sigma bonds. Now fill the electrons. BF3 has 24 valence electrons. 6 of these electrons are used in the BF sigma bonds. The remaining electrons are mostly fluorine lone pair electrons. All the electrons are paired, so BF3 is diamagnetic, and because we have 8 bonding orbitals occupied and 0 anti-bonding orbitals, we have a bond order of 4, or per bond, this is 4/3, so we have a bond order of 1.33, which indicates a strong single bond. Now, let's look at vibration. BF3 is nonlinear, so the number of vibrational modes is 3n minus 6 in this case, instead of 5 like last time. BF3 has 4 atoms, so n equals 4, so we have 3 times 4 minus 6 gives 6. So BF3 has 6 vibrational modes. Because BF3 has D3H symmetry, some of these modes are degenerate, meaning 2 vibrations have the same energy. So using the symmetry labels, the vibrations can be described as either A1 prime, A2 double prime, and 2E prime. And remember that the E prime is doubly degenerate, so this still gives 6 total vibrational modes. Now, we can predict the spectroscopy from this. The A1 prime symmetric stretch is Raman active. The A2 double prime out of plane mode is IR active, and the E prime modes are both IR and Raman active. So we might expect 3 IR and 3 Raman peaks. And this is different from Cl2, where one vibration was Raman active but IR inactive. So from the molecular orbital diagram and symmetry analysis, we can conclude BF3 has 3 BF sigma bonds. BF3 is diatomic. It has a bond order of 1.33. It's trigonal planar. It belongs to the D3H point group, is nonpolar, and it has 6 vibrational modes, and its vibrations are both IR and Raman active. This makes BF3 a useful comparison to the early examples. So by comparing these molecules, we can see how changing the molecular symmetry changes molecular orbitals, polarity, reactivity, and spectroscopy. And I've left a practice example for you. Have a go at it, pause the video if you need. Otherwise, that's about it. I hope that made sense and you understood. Feel free to ask questions in the comment. Otherwise, thanks for watching.